Step into the world of power, loyalty, and luck.
I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse.
With family, cannolis, and spins mean everything.
Now, you wanna get mixed up in the family business.
Introducing The Godfather at ChumbaCasino.com. Test your luck in the shadowy world of The Godfather slot.
Someday, I will call upon you to do a service for me.
Play The Godfather now at ChumbaCasino.com.
Welcome to the family.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, private investigator Ed Opperman. Tonight, we are honored and really lucky to have, what's his name? Mr. Arnie Lerma. Arnie, are you there?
Yes.
Yeah,
I said I'm here.
How are you, brother? Tell us about yourself and how you got started with Scientology.
Oh, boy. When I was a little kid, I was one of those guys that would take everything apart to see how it worked on the inside. My mom was a single mom, and so I'd have some time left over after school, and on the way home was a big library, and I'd go there and I'd read. And I think when I was 11, I took one of those correspondence courses in the back of radio, TV, electronics. It said, learn to be an electronics technician. And I think it was $22.95 from my paper route money. And I took a course in electronics and learned on vacuum tubes and fixed my first TV by the end of the year. Ended up being a technician and service manager at the hottest hi-fi store in D.C. called Meyer Emco, right on Connecticut Avenue. And I was living in the nightclub district in Georgetown in a second-story apartment with two nurses that were going to Georgetown University. And I decided I'd join the Sea Org.
Well, how'd you hear about it, though? Wait, how'd you hear about it, though?
Well, my mother was involved. She had been the director of the organization's evening thing. They call it foundation, but she was essentially the director for a while, and she had wanted me to get involved in it. For her, it was a solution to keep me from, smoking pot and taking LSD.
Right.
Which was kind of in back then. And I thought it was rubbish. I think I looked at Dianetics and thought, this doesn't make any sense, and I trusted my instincts enough to know that if it doesn't make sense, it's not my problem. It's theirs. And but she kept up at me, and she got me to read a different book. I think it was called New Slant on Life, and something in it got to me, and I became a believer. Because I knew I could find out anything I wanted to find out about how something in the physical universe operated, but it seemed like nobody had a clue how the mind operated, because if you could make people sane, then there would be no war, right?
Right.
I'd been tear gassed on the north side of the Pentagon in '68, and went to Woodstock in '69. Though I don't remember the last day, I remember the first 2 days, and I was having a great time as a kid. I was making what's the equivalent of $70,000 a year as service manager, and then decided I'd join the Sea Organization, and try to save the world.
Well, Arnie,
I figured the world was worth saving. And
how old are you, Arnie?
And Hubbard said that I'm 64.
Okay.
All right. So I was 19 and making really good money, and then decided I'd join Scientology, which is crazy. Considering what I had going for myself. Anyway. So then I got involved with them, and because I had an electronics background, I sort of got treated a little differently. because they were having problems that nobody else understood. So, but I did, and so I fixed the problems. Anyway, so I ended up in the Sea Org, and then I got out in the winter of 77, 78, right after they had gotten raided. After I met Hubbard's daughter in New York, she had, in Scientology, you're supposed to be able to send letters to Hubbard and he'll answer them. So I had a dream, and in the dream, I dreamed of this device that I thought might be really cool if we could make it. And I made a sketch and said how we might be able to do it, and sent it to Hubbard. Well, Hubbard doesn't really answer the letters. There's a room filled with kids, and they answer the letters. But the person running that room of people that answered the letters was Suzette Hubbard. And if one of the kids gets a letter that they can't answer, they give it to Suzette. Well, they didn't have any idea what I was going on about, so they gave it to Suzette. Well, she didn't have any idea what I was going on about either. So she sent me a message when she was in New York while her father was hiding out at a super secret location in the Bronx. At the time, it was called Roni for Relay Office, New York. And she said she wanted to meet. And I said, who wants to meet me? I said, well, Suzette. Suzette? Yeah, well, so I met Suzette, and she talked about this letter, and I explained it to her, and pretty soon both of us were hearing violins playing off in the distance. It was sort of love at first sight. And then they brought her back to headquarters, I think, to get away from me. And I ended up flying down there, and we were going to secretly get married. We got blood tests and a marriage license. And she was getting her auditing therapy, and she, at the beginning of each of these sessions, they ask people a series of questions, and one of the questions is, listen to this one. I mean, you're gonna dig this. Is there anything someone almost found out about?
That's during the auditing.
Now, they ask all their members this question. Yeah. Well, I mean, at the beginning of any auditing session that they do, they ask this question, amongst a couple others. But you got to understand that Tom Cruise and John Travolta have answered that question all the time, and they write down those answers. Anyway, but we could get back to that. Anyhow, so Suzette gave up the fact that we had gotten blood tests and a marriage license, and suddenly I was placed under arrest, couldn't leave the room, and then brought into a room and with a light bulb hanging from the ceiling, a desk, and a single chair, I believe, and that's pretty much all I remember about the room. And I do not recall the conversation. I do not recall the two guys that were asking me questions. All I recall is the conclusion from their presentation, which was, I was being given an offer of safe passage out of the state of Florida with all body parts still attached if I told Suzette the marriage was off. Well, this incident was enough of a shock. I mean, like classic shock therapy, enough of a shock to my system to wake me up from the Scientology trance. And I thought, well, if they're capable of this, what else are they capable of? No matter how good this seems, I'm getting the hell out of here alive. So I walked out, and Suzette looked at me, I looked at her, and she burst out crying. And I told her we weren't going to do it. But I credit Ms. Hubbard with saving my life and getting me out of Scientology. I mean, it would be kind of hard for her to leave with her father in it and her mother in it. But Suzette Hubbard basically saved my life and got me out of Scientology. For that, I will be forever grateful.
Well, let me ask you a quick question.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah, but you said you got arrested. Now, you saying you got arrested by the Scientologists on their boat?
Well, not arrested, detained.
Right.
No, this was after they'd gotten off the boat and at the Fort Harrison Hotel. It might have been at the Jack Tar Hotel before they tore it down. You know, because they had the Jack Tar and the Fort Harrison were across from each other.
So they
I
just
believe, anyway. It was a while ago.
Yeah, I got you. Now, so then they grab you and they handcuff you and they throw you in a room, or like they had a cell?
Well, no, they didn't handcuff me.
Okay.
They didn't grab me, and I wasn't placed in a cell. I was placed in a room and said, "You're confined here." And,
Okay.
you know, two guys were standing outside the door. And either of them was bigger than me.
Gotcha. I got you.
It's not like you have a lot of choices.
I hear you, man. Now, did the room have a bed and
No, there
stuff
were
like
no
that?
handcuffs. I wasn't duct taped to a chair, and I wasn't beat with rubber hoses.
Okay.
But the offer they made was unmistakable.
And this was all because you wanted to have a relationship with Hubbard's daughter.
Yeah. Well, yeah, she wanted, yeah. It was one hell of an infatuation. I mean, good gosh, it was magical.
Right.
What can I say? One of those things that happens when you're, 25 years old and you're 26 years old and you got a boatload of testosterone and she's got a boatload of the other one.
But now let me ask you this now, because here you're in love with this girl, but you knew that her father was this really intense guy. Didn't that set you off? And
well, yeah, but she would ask that. Suzette used to say, "Well, aren't you concerned about who my father is?" Well, Einstein here was thinking, well, this guy has done so much good for the world and has the secrets to the universe.
Right.
Duh.
Right.
Right.
Let me ask you a question.
I was in the trance, pal.
Yeah. Now, where you want?
I was a good Scientologist.
Right. Okay, because you really dug it.
Pardon me?
You really dug it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I still thought it worked. I mean, I thought they had some organizational problems,
Right.
I thought some of the people that were working there were crazy, but I still thought Hubbard had his shit together.
Gotcha. Or watch your language.
I still did.
Okay, watch the language.
Up until that moment. Pardon me.
No, that's okay. Okay, now what kind of stuff did you experience when you were in there with these guys? I want to hear all about the kind of stuff, like his fascination with Crowley, the Manson connections. When you were in there, what did you experience that would kind of freak us out that we would want to know?
I had a very benign experience. I'm not the guy to interview for horror stories that you experience in Scientology. Like in one instance in 1975, I think, I got sent to their prison camp, the RPF, Rehabilitation Project Force. And lots of people tell terrible stories of this. And when I got sent to it, unlike other people, I told them where to go. And I left where I was, the position I was in Los Angeles, and drove with another gal that had also been sent to the slave area. And we went to the office in New York and walked in there and walked up to the guy that ran it. And we said, "Hi, we're from the PAC area, and they're crazy, as you may have noticed. And we both got sent to the RPF, but we're not going. And we wondered if you needed some help because we didn't want to leave the Sea Org." And that office in New York was a rat hole, and he was desperate for staff, so he said, "Welcome aboard." And I started working there. It was while working there that I ran into Suzette.
All right.
Because she was also in New York, cross town, while Hubbard was hiding out.
Okay, very interesting.
So I don't have, at one point, okay, I do have one thing. I did get locked up in a wire room because they thought I was they thought I was from the CIA or something.
Okay, well, what would make
waiting for some interview. Well, our guys were doing a security check looking for infiltrators or something, and they were doing these interviews in this little closet room, and nobody had the key to the closet room, so I pulled out a paper clip and I picked the lock. So they thought I was a a professional that
Gotcha.
did that for a living. I wasn't. Remember I said as a little kid I used to take everything apart? I took locks apart too.
Right.
You understand?
I do.
It was an old worn-out Ilco. You know, you could almost do them with your thumbnail.
Okay, now, when you were on there and you're dating Hubbard's daughter, how often did you interact with Hubbard? When you were on the Sea Org and you're dating Hubbard's daughter, how often did you interact with L. Ron Hubbard?
Perhaps a couple of months in New York, we were dating. We'd see each other on the weekends. And then when they moved her down to Clearwater, I had taken a med. Oh, here's one for you.
It is Ryan Seacrest here. There was a recent social media trend which consisted of flying on a plane with no music, no movies, no entertainment. But a better trend would be going to ChumbaCasino.com. It's like having a mini social casino in your pocket. Chumba Casino has over 100 online casino-style games, all absolutely free. It's the most fun you can have online and on a plane. So grab your free welcome bonus now at ChumbaCasino.com. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
I had to take a medical leave because I got incredibly ill. The food there was so bad that when I finally did get a diagnosis for what was wrong with me, the doctor said that I'd stopped making stomach acid, which only happens to people that are starving. You know, it's like, you know, if you don't give a starving dog a steak, it'll kill him. You know what I mean?
All right.
Because they're starving. They can't even digest it. It'll poison them. Well, I had been selling artwork down in the village on the weekends to have a little money because you don't get paid anything. And I mean, I think it was $10 a week or something back then that you'd get from Scientology. And I was used to having some cash around. So I used to make this artwork and I'd sell it down in the village. So I always had some cash around. So once a week I'd go out and I'd buy myself a decent meal. And evidently, I had a steak one night, and it was just, I couldn't digest it. So it poisoned me. Ended up in the hospital. I was miserable. And after all of the doctors, you know, you go to all these doctors, and they run these tests on you, and they say, you know, you're not making any stomach acid. Why is that? You know, they think you're like a normal person who eats food. No, I was very skinny. I was in the Sea Org. I was eating the stuff that they were serving. And at the time, there was a bit of beans and rice. I mean, they don't feed their own staff, yet at the time they weren't feeding their own staffs. We were shipping freeze-dried fillets off to Hubbard.
Well, so basically,
money for Hubbard.
Yeah, everyone working on the Sea Org was basically slave labor.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. There's, you know, absolutely.
Well, describe it, because then I've seen some stuff like I've seen 60 Minutes, and they had the guys running around in Navy uniforms and stuff. Can you describe it?
Well, it got a lot worse after I left, because you have to understand, I got out in '78. All right, I've been out for decades, and it's gotten harsher and harsher, especially after Hubbard died, and this kid Miscavige is running it,
right?
Who is, I think both Hubbard and Miscavige could be classed as psychopaths. However, some psychopaths are very brilliant, and some of them know how some things work. I don't know that Miscavige knows how anything works except paying bills, buying PIs, intimidating people, and doing what the lawyer tells him to do. It really is a Napoleon complex and a sociopath.
Yeah, everyone always says that because he's so short, right? He's so short, they gave him this Napoleon. They always make that Napoleon crack with this guy.
Well, the thing is, Hubbard wasn't short, but he was the same way. I mean, that man was brutal to his enemies. He stole from everyone that had a good idea, never gave any credit, and if they ever asked for credit, he would destroy them. They're using this device, the E-meter. They call it the Hubbard electrometer. It's not the Hubbard electrometer. It was invented by a black electrician named Volney Matheson, around 1950 or 51. He's the guy that came up with it. Hubbard just stole it from him. When transistors came out, he came out with one that didn't require tubes, because Volney was back in around 1950, so it used tubes, Well, Volney was actually brilliant and called out Hubbard.
Oh, well, let me ask you a question.
Fraud and a con man.
Well, no kidding. But now, have you met Miscavige?
No, I haven't met Miscavige. I've been at his home in New Jersey, trying to get some money out of his father while he was in the backyard playing. It's kind of funny, because there was a noise at the back window, and you had the sound of scraping on the screen, and I said, "What's that?" And his dad, Ron Miscavige, says, "Oh, that must be Davey, my son. He's playing in the backyard." So he would have been looking in through the window to see these two guys in Sea Organization, the Navy officer's uniform. I look pretty good in the uniform, and
okay.
I like to fantasize and think that when he saw me and my friend. And Gary Lowe, he was a sharp dresser too. He looked great in the uniform. He looked at the pair of us there talking to his father, and he might have looked and thought, "I want to be just like them." Imagine how much this would bother Miscavige when he reads the transcript when it's sent up to him.
Gotcha. Now, what about now, Miscavige?
That was a little jive.
Miscavige, though, he doesn't run around in a Navy uniform anymore, right?
Repeat that?
Miscavige, he doesn't run around in a Navy uniform anymore, right? They've done away with that?
Oh no, he still does that for ceremonies and things internal. He's probably not doing it in public as much as he used to. But no, they still wear that stuff.
Really?
It's still the official uniform. Yeah.
So
they might have some new uniforms based on survey technology that are more socially acceptable to hide the fact that it's basically an emulation of the Nazis reincarnated today in Los Angeles, using the same mind control technology with a different set of lies, different short story, but it's the same stuff. You give somebody a purpose, you tell them they're doing good things, and then you tell them to go kill people. Yeah. Essentially, that's what you're doing. There's this most recent incident in the LA Times reported just the other day. He hired a private investigator paying him $10,000 a week. That's an enormous amount of money. And the private investigator calls up when he sees, to track his own father, to keep an eye, to surveil his own father. Well, his father was evidently looking for a cell phone, which pocket he had it in, and feeling around on his chest to see whether he had it. And the PI thought he was having a heart attack and called headquarters. And Miscavige comes back and says, "Let him die."
Wow.
That's unbelievable. This is like LA Times 2 days ago. Big story.
Yeah, I didn't catch that one. But, you were talking about how it was Nazi-like, right? What do you know about L. Ron Hubbard's connections to actual Nazis, the Nazi party in Germany?
Oh, boy. You want the thumbnail version, which is a long answer, or you want the short version, which will take more than one interview, or you want the long version, which will require buying the book.
Hey, by the way, man, tell us about the book. Do you have a title for it, and when's it coming out?
It should have been out already. I gave myself another 30 days, and it's called Lermanetics, which is
very good.
It's actually quite appropriate.
Yeah.
It's called Lermanetics, exposing the modern science of deceiving the public for the profit. Advanced psychological techniques reverse engineered from 2 decades in the old Scientology war. There's a bunch of case histories of actual incidents that have happened that illustrate each of the techniques used. And those same techniques are used in Scientology to get the people that read the books to accept the rubbish as being true. If you accept enough of this stuff as being true, you're led to the inescapable conclusion that you have to get involved in Scientology and give them your money to get rid of this thing that Hubbard invented called a reactive mind. And there's a technique used to get people to get that belief. There's actually a number of techniques used all together. They could be described as rhetoric. They could be described as covert hypnosis. Some people have called them neuro-linguistic programming. But the near and short of it, I like calling it covert hypnosis because it makes more sense to me and aligns more additional information, because humans are incredibly suggestible once you do. Actually, this is a big secret. Your listeners should pay attention.
Okay.
At the moment something occurs, whether it's something happening, okay, a UFO landing in the...
It is Ryan Seacrest here. There was a recent social media trend which consisted of flying on a plane with no music, no movies, no entertainment. But a better trend would be going to chumbacasino.com. It's like having a mini social casino in your pocket. Chumba Casino has over 100 online casino-style games, all absolutely free. It's the most fun you can have online and on a plane. So grab your free welcome bonus now at chumbacasino.com. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
In the front yard, or a building getting blown up in Manhattan, or the cat gets hit by a car. When something shocking, amazing like that happens, most people stop thinking. This is most people know this part of it. They know that you stop thinking. There's even a phrase, a thought-stopping phrase. Well, that's only half the story. The other half, I believe, is classified, which is why I can't find a contemporary psychologist who will discuss it in this manner. When you stop thinking, you have become more suggestible. When you no longer are evaluating the information that you're seeing, because you've entered a state of, mild state of shock or surprise or awe, okay? You're not thinking. And whatever you're listening to, you sit there and you no longer consider the possibility of what you're being told is any other way. This is just one bit. If you think about this for a while and look at times that you've encountered in your own past, you will find that this is used throughout society. This is how they did 9/11.
Right. What you're describing
this is how they staged. Yeah,
Trauma-based mind control.
You watch this thing, and then they're telling you what you're seeing. Hubbard traumatizes you by telling you how terrible and awful this reactive mind is that doesn't exist, and then convinces you that you have to get rid of it, which he can't. Well, the only reason he can get rid of your reactive mind is because he created it by suggestion to begin with. And then he gets you to pay through the nose for the rest of your life and give up your friends and family. And it's all very clever. It's like he tells people that there's a state called clear. Now, the reason he picked that word to describe it is because it's self-evident if your listeners will consider that word as a hypnotic command. Clear. Makes your friends, your family, your wallet, your dreams, your wife, boyfriend, kids, bank account, everybody that you used to talk to that, meant anything, it makes them disappear as a suggestion. Makes them invisible. They're still there, but you can't see them because they're clear. You see what he's doing?
Yeah, I do. But now let me ask you this, though. How did Hubbard learn that? How did he come up with that? Was he taught that? Did he come up with it on his own?
That's the problem I have. See, I have a serious problem because if you look at the man's college grades, when I read that book that got me hooked, there wasn't an internet. There were no critical books out about psychology. I believed Hubbard when he said that he was an atomic physicist. You have to understand that at my age, and I worshipped at the altar of science and reason. I knew I could figure out how anything worked already. I was fixing things. I knew how the insides, all this stuff around us worked. It was no mystery. But I did not know how the mind worked. And Hubbard promised that he had figured this out. And it made sense the way he described it. But when he says he was an atomic physicist, he did take one semester at George Washington University, and he got an F. 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 Saying it 3 times.
F.
F. Yeah, got an F. Think about it. He doesn't tell you that in Dianetics, or else you would never have listened to him, would you? But at the time, atomic physics, kids then were being conditioned to duck and cover.
Right.
Atomic physics was like, this was cutting edge stuff, man. Whoa. Smashing atoms, radiation, and the entire world. Oh my God. This was a big deal. Well, in the years and years later, as a matter of fact, it was recently, it was only back in 2006 or 2005, and I came across a copy of the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists from 1959, talking about a lecture by Dr. Robert Oppenheimer, who, is called the father of the atomic bomb. Oppenheimer is lecturing to the psychologists, and he's telling them that he was very concerned about the advanced technology of psychology, about these breakthroughs they were making in how to control what a person believes to be true. And he said that those breakthroughs made the challenges that the atomic physicists faced, developing the atomic bomb, seem trivial. Oppenheimer used the word trivial. So right there we've got the father of the atomic bomb stating that the ability to control what a person believes to be true makes the threat of the bomb seem trivial.
Right.
Well, perhaps we should investigate how that's done. Well, it seems that when you go to psychology books, that a lot of stuff seems to be disappearing from the current curriculum. For example, I'll ask you something here. You know that repetition helps an idea stick, right?
Yep. Yeah, they say if you repeat it 6
times. You know why?
Well, I don't know. They say if you repeat it 6 times that you remember it.
Right, but has anybody explained why?
No.
Yeah, that's my point. they're not explaining why. There's a lot of things like that. All right. This atrocity, hypnotic induction. This isn't adequately described in psychological curriculum of today. At least I can't find it. I discussed it with a psychology graduate. One, a rather involved thing from my book. And I asked her about this, and she said, that was not in any of our course materials, but we had a very old professor. And one day he gave us a lecture. And he said that this material is no longer in the books. And that's what he talked about. And I'm not going to try to explain that here, because I'm sorry that my answers take so long.
No, you're fine.
You tried to explain this stuff. But there's a lot of techniques like that.
But now the thing is, what got us off onto this topic here was I was asking you, how could it be that Hubbard learned these kind of mind control techniques? Now, you said yourself, he wasn't a bright guy.
Well,
he got an F. How do you learn it?
Yeah, he wasn't a bright guy.
Yeah.
Well, the old-timers that have been in Scientology from back in the 60s and 70s, the youngsters, don't believe a word of this stuff, I'm telling you. But the old-timers all believe it. And the reason they believe it is they were working there, and they would get new things that Hubbard was supposedly writing, these issues that he would write, policies and bulletins and orders. And he would come out with so much stuff every day, pages and maybe 30, 40 pages. And this is on legal paper on both sides. No typos before there's a word processor.
Right.
No man can do that. No human is capable of doing that. Now,
it is Ryan Seacrest here. There was a recent social media trend which consisted of flying on a plane with no music, no movies, no entertainment. But a better trend would be going to chumbacasino.com. It's like having a mini social casino in your pocket. Chumba Casino has over 100 online casino-style games, all absolutely free. It's the most fun you can have online and on a plane. So grab your free welcome bonus now at chumbacasino.com. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
But there's some hints. Hubbard brags that he was able to write Dianetics in a few nights or a few weeks, and he put a roll of telex paper in his typewriter so he could just keep going. Well, there's more to that story, which is an example of the answer to the question you posed.
Okay.
After I'd gotten all the media, hang on, I need to get a glass of water here.
Okay, you know what you do? Listen, I'll play a commercial. I'll play a quick commercial while you're taking a drink. You got 3 minutes, okay?
Make my day.
Okay, brother, love you. We'll be right back with more of Arnie Lerma. This guy got it all, man. I just hope I can get it out of him. Okay, first hand with the L. Ron Hubbard. He's writing a book. Should be out in a month or two. Well, the book will be up as soon as it's available on Amazon. The link will be on my site. Arnaldo Lerma, fascinating guy. Inside from Scientology.
Lerma.
What's that? Lerma. Sorry, my friend. I'm sorry. I got so much going on. I'm so distracted. You have no idea. People hitting me up all at the same time. But we're getting a huge response.
Let me tell you.
Yeah. Go ahead.
You're doing better than Barney Luma.
Yeah, right. Well, give me time. Give me time, all right? I could mess it up even worse, so don't get your hopes up.
All right.
Now.
All right, look. Okay, go ahead.
Well, we're trying to figure out where the hell did Hubbard come from? Who's behind him? Because like you said, he's not that smart. Somehow he figured out this way to brainwash a good army full of people, and milk them for all this money. And we were talking about what was his connection to the real Nazis, because they definitely had some mind control stuff going on. What do you think? Is there anything in that, or is there anything in his connection? He's claimed that he worked for like MI6 or MI5, Secret Service, stuff like that. Anything? Do you have any weight to that?
Well, his son, in the 86 Penthouse interview, said that the same people that transmitted information to Hitler gave information to my father. That's the way he phrased it. Now, there was a fellow named George Estabrooks that worked for OSS, which turned into the CIA and Defense Intelligence Agency back around 47 or so.
Right.
And George Estabrooks said, it has always been the writer's contention that Hitler is the greatest hypnotist of our day. George Estabrooks said that in 1943. He also stated that the only way to avoid having what you believe to be true manipulated, the only way to keep from having what you think is real be manipulated is to become familiar with the techniques being used upon you. I know that these techniques will take a normal person and make them basically an operating sociopath, a person without conscience. You know, there was the School of the Americas in Fort Benning that trained all those death squads in South America. You know, they could wipe out an entire village, every man, woman, and child. And that, you know, it's like there aren't that many sociopaths. They had a program that created a sociopath who could do that kind of stuff. And that training was given at Fort Benning School of the Americas. And the training is classified. The closest material I found to the stuff that I've dug up, I'm told it's classified. Keep going. I can't say anything. That's all they tell me. Right. They also say, watch your back.
Well, when you're looking for that, when you're looking for that information, where are you going? Who are you talking to that's telling you to watch your back and it's classified?
Well, what I did was, it appears that around in the late 40s, or like 47 is a good year. Some other things might have happened then too, but around 47, a lot of information starts disappearing from psychology texts. Stuff just doesn't get taught anymore. A lot of the most brilliant Nazis were also brought over under an operation called Operation Paperclip, and they were given jobs, at big American corporations, manufacturing corporations, university professorships, think tank jobs where they could sort of sit there for a while, do what they're good at before they found an opening that they could be placed in. The Ford Foundation did a great deal of that. And that brings me that's the introduction to the answer to your question. You see, in 2005, I got a telephone call from a friend of mine that I'd done I'd done a restaurant for him, done fancy speakers. He had a restaurant at Boston Metro, or Courthouse Metro in Arlington. And I'd done that for him back in the 80s or something. Anyway, so he calls me up in 2005 and says, "Hi, how are you doing?" I go, "Bruce, hey, Bruce Carroll, how you been? Is there a problem at the restaurant?" And he goes, No. I sold that years ago. He says, "I've been reading about you on the internet." And I went, "Yeah, well, I bet you have." And he goes, "Yeah, you've been through a lot." And I go, "Yeah, it's what a long, strange trip it's been, pal." And he goes, "Well, I had something happen to this is Bruce. He's telling me that he had something happen to him. His father had passed away a while ago, and then his mother had passed away. And his mother had never unlocked his roll-top desk that was in his father's office. And after his mom passed away, he finally unlocked it and started looking through Daddy's papers. Well, his father was, I got to look the name up, but Dr. Carroll was the president of George Washington University in the early 60s. Before that, he was a director at the Ford Foundation. And when he was at the Ford Foundation, his nickname was the Fifth Rider of the Apocalypse. The Ford Foundation had one division that did psychological research. The material was considered so disquieting to the mind that the directors would share running it. They would, they'd only let somebody deal with that stuff for 6 months, and then another guy would take it over.
Really?
Because the material had such an effect on anybody that read it. They basically planned all of American society. They planned the centralized distribution systems. They're the ones that planned for the destruction of Main Street. It wasn't just competition. This was all planned. They planned to have a society where everybody was dependent on this centralized distribution system because they had to be able to control people. And the best way to control people is to control their access to food. And now they're doing it with water.
Right.
But they planned all of them. The little houses all the same in the suburbs, the mass-produced houses. It was all designed to make the independent operator obsolete and make the corporate big operators, give them exclusive, driving independent contractors out of business. They didn't want anybody that knew how anything worked. They wanted a bunch of specialties and have it all be centrally controlled. Anyway.
Wait, and you're saying that this came out of the Ford Foundation, you're saying?
Yeah, that came out of the Ford Foundation, but the Ford, it wasn't just, there's a bunch of them.
Right.
And they were all...
Ryan Seacrest here. When you have a busy schedule, it's important to maximize your downtime. One of the best ways to do that is by going to ChumbaCasino.com. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino games like spin slots, bingo, and solitaire that you can play for free for a chance to redeem some serious prizes. So hop on to ChumbaCasino.com now and live the Chumba life. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
They're all kind of interconnected, and they're all basically front groups. You know how Scientology has a bunch of front groups?
Right.
They've got, Concerned Businessmen of America Association, the Way to Happiness Foundation. They got Narcanon. They've got, CCHR, Citizens Commission for Human Rights. All of these things. Well, these guys have had the same deal for the same agenda, which was this controlling every facet of society and planning our future. It's like everything that we see today was planned back then. But I need to go a little further here. There's so much material. You guys are going to have to buy the book. It'll blow your mind, and you're going to have nightmares for a while. I'll tell you, after I learned this stuff, that my old friend Bruce told me, he was in shock from what he found inside that cabinet. And after he explained it to me, I stumbled around for a year and a days, just looking at everything differently, going, oh my God, it all makes sense now.
Well,
it's like, we all went through life.
Arnie, a couple of things. My audience is not surprised by this.
Got so screwed up.
Yeah, my audience is aware of what you're talking about, so it's not going to shock them. And also, too, we'll have you back. When the book comes out, I'll have you right back. We'll come right back.
All right, well...
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm just telling you, it shocked me.
Yeah.
I had difficulty with this material. And before this fella Dr. Carroll worked at the Ford Foundation. If you go to his wiki page, there's no entry for the years after 1945 until he shows up at the Ford Foundation. Well, that's because he was the director for Operation Paperclip. And, you know, you go to Wiki and it says they brought in 840-something rocket scientists. Yeah, right. Let me tell you something. They brought in tens of thousands of these guys. They put them all in the universities. They put them all into, you know, the CIA. They went into the Defense Intelligence Agency. They went into
Food and Drug Administration.
All the big think tank corporations.
Yeah.
Huh?
Food and Drug Administration. Remember we were talking off the air?
Tens of thousands.
Yeah.
Say that again?
The Food and Drug Administration. Remember we were talking off the air and I was telling you about my other guest? We can't mention her name.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, these are the old Nazis.
Right.
All right. And, you know, just a boatload of them. And they basically took over. And you see, when Eisenhower was talking about the military-industrial complex to warn us, he knew about paperclip, but he couldn't say the word. It was classified.
Right. Okay, that makes a lot of sense, too, now.
Doesn't it?
Yeah, now that you say that, yeah.
Yeah. All right, let me keep going. All right?
Okay, well, let me just give you a notice here.
Because
it's 6 o'clock, okay? In about 1 minute, we have a hard break. It's a 5-minute break, okay? So, and for TalkStream Live, the Talk Superstation. Good. Take a little nap and come back. I tell you what, why don't you start taking a break now, and I'll do some little announcements, and then I'll put on the ad. We're here with good old Arnie Lerma. I got that right? Arnie Lerma?
Yep.
Arnie Lerma.
You got it right.
From the cult of Scientology, okay? He's was in there on the inside. He knew Hubbard. He dated Hubbard's daughter. He's the guy who released all those documents on Xenu under his real name. Before that, it was being released anonymously. I want to get into that. I hope we can get into some stuff about, because he was telling me off the air about how Hubbard actually had paintings and pictures and stuff like that of Aleister Crowley on walls in different rooms. He also mentioned to me, too, about how he knew for a fact that Charlie Manson had an E-meter over there at Spawn Ranch. And that's something I'd be really interested in hearing. And also, to what else was it? I'd like to hear about Jack Parsons. All those stories you hear about Jack Parsons and being connected with the Hubbard and the Moonchild and all that kind of stuff, too. But all the stuff we're getting into here about the Nazis is pretty big stuff as well. As a matter of fact, I can remember way back around the time when Arnie was posting there in alt religion and alt COS on Usenet back in those days, when all that stuff came public, that caused all this big attack on him with these lawsuits and these private investigators and all the attack that when he was deemed to be fair game by Scientology and their thugs and their lawyers and their private investigators. And not all private investigators are nice, fun guys like me, right? I'm out there. You know, the kind of, not the kind of people you want to hang around with. Yeah, Arnie, are you back yet? Hey, what if we lost Arnie? What if those Scientology thugs came down and got Arnie and we'd have no show? That would be horrible. But I'm sure he'll be back in a minute or two here. Walt Disney, too. Hey, yeah, I'm getting a message here from JP. He's telling me that Jack Parsons, Walt Disney, was also hooked up with L. Ron Hubbard. I'd love to hear that story, too, as soon as we get back here with good old Arnie Lerma. So coming up next week, we got the Ganja Gangster. Oh, Arnie, you're back. Arnie. Are you back, Arnie? I see you typing. Oh, putting on his ears. He's putting on his headset. He's getting ready to join us back. Hey, Arnie, I got a question from the chat room. You might be on mute there, Arnie. But I got a question from the chat room. What is the connection between L. Ron Hubbard and Walt Disney? You there? We're back on the air.
Yep.
Oh, there you go. Okay, now okay. You can hear me, right? Arnie? Arnie?
I don't hear you.
You don't hear me at all? I hear you fine. How's that? Let me see if I'm on mute. I don't think so. I can hear myself. Good there. Oh, I'm on mute. I was on mute, Marnie. I'm sorry. That was me. That was my stupid fault. I'm sorry, brother. We got a question from the chat room. Welcome back, by the way. We got a question from the chat room about the connection between Walt Disney and L. Ron Hubbard. What do you have there?
I don't.
Okay.
I don't know anything about the connection between Walt Disney and L. Ron Hubbard, other than the sources of manipulation might have been the same.
Gotcha. Now, what about
that? Would make things look very similar.
Now we were going into a lot about Operation Paperclip. Now, what about the connections between Jack Parsons? Jack Parsons, from the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, a famous Satanist, and his connections with L. Ron Hubbard. What do you have any firsthand information on that?
Well, Jack ran a lodge called the Agape Lodge. On the walls of each room was a big picture of Aleister Crowley. And, in the Scientology organizations, on the wall of each room is a big picture of L. Ron Hubbard.
Oh, really?
Maybe that's where he got the idea. Yeah. I went to the Air and Space Museum, and they had a display of JATO rockets. And they were cutaways, so you could see the inside. And I was probably the only person that noticed this, but, in a solid fuel rocket, the hard thing is getting it to burn consistently, in a controlled burn, because it's a fine line between being a 4th of July firework and a bomb. Anyway, the hole that's cut all the way through the JATO rockets is in the cross-section of a pentagram. I thought that was amazing.
And what do you make of that? What do you make of that? Is there more to it just than yeah?
Well, I can't say that I know a lot about Satanism or Luciferianism as a subject, other than, Aleister Crowley's "Do as Thou Willst," which basically would be a great rule to live by if you had no conscience. You can do whatever needs to be done without conscience.
Step into the world of power, loyalty, and luck.
I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse.
With family, cannolis, and spins mean everything.
Now, you wanna get mixed up in the family business.
Introducing The Godfather at ChumbaCasino.com. Test your luck in the shadowy world of The Godfather slot.
Someday, I will call upon you to do a service for me.
Play The Godfather now at ChumbaCasino.com.
Welcome to the family.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
And one of the Scientology, whatever Hubbard did in Scientology, he manages to hijack and nullify a person's conscience. So they think they're doing good works, but they're in fact doing the most amazing evil acts, but they think it's good. I mean, they had people going through John Travolta's folders, which are supposed to be confidential. This is religious, confessional formulary, they say. But they just had people going through the folders, picking everything that John Travolta had ever said that he did in answer to that question. Have you done something that someone almost found out about you? I mean, if your audience answers that question a couple times, you come up with some pretty nasty stuff. But it's all stuff that's part of being human. Nothing really to be ashamed of. Hubbard Scientology basically turns its members into obedient slaves, willing slaves who will do whatever they need to do to stay in Scientology and get access to the next big secret. At the time that I posted the story of Xenu, I was aware that the fact of the secret kept so many people in Scientology, because if they didn't know what the secret was, they would invent something in their mind so incredible, so strange, so out of this world, horrible or whatever, some fantastic imaginary incident that had to be the reason that it was secret, and becomes the reason to endure all of the abuse that you suffer and the financial hardship and the disconnection from, friends and family. Plus you're living in a fairyland where everybody in the outside world thinks you're a nutball. But
let me
there's
ask
got to
you
be
this.
a good reason to do that.
Now, let me ask you this. Now the common theory is, or the common belief, is that the reason why Travolta and Tom Cruise, they're being blackmailed by something, and the theory is, well, that they could be homosexual. Okay. Now you got John Travolta. He's kissing his pilot on the.
Well, I know, but
right.
Absolutely. I mean, how could you? It's so difficult. You give up all of your deepest, darkest secrets, everything that's happened to you as far back as you can remember, and they all get written down. That's an awful lot of leverage on a rat brain.
Yeah, but Arnie, at this day and age, when everyone already assumes John Travolta's gay, and even what's his name too, the other one, Cruise, like there's so many people that just assume it already. Why wouldn't they quit the church? Are they happy there? You think they really believe this, or they have some other bigger dirt on them?
You're assuming that the secret is that they're gay,
right? That's what I'm saying. Yeah, could it be something else?
Well, what if it's something worse than that?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, what could it be?
One of the favorite ways to get control of a congressman who won't cooperate with you is to set him up with somebody that's underage, and then you got him for statutory rape and pedophilia.
Right.
And, that happens. It's called a honey trap. And it's just the way business is on Capitol Hill these days.
Yeah, we just interviewed...
Actually, it's been that way for a while.
Yeah, we just interviewed the confessions of a D.C. madam, Henry Vincent, who ran those homosexual escort services there in D.C. with the whole Franklin cover-up and all that stuff.
Oh, look.
Yeah.
Oh, listen, give me 2 minutes.
Go ahead.
I was doing an installation at a lobby firm in D.C. Okay. And they wanted, and I just fixed everything up so it worked, and they had some big shot coming in that they were trying to impress, and they asked me if I could come in for that show. I said, yeah, sure, just pay the labor bill. And they said, fine. So they got this big shot sitting there, and they bring in this lovely gal. Oh my God, she was a 9 or a 10, okay?
Okay.
And she moved really well. And she was reading off the flip charts and talking about the PowerPoint presentation that was very slick. But he wasn't looking at that. He was looking at her boobs. But he didn't seem real interested. So then they pulled her out and they brought in this beautiful black man, 20 years old, 22 maybe, fresh out of college. And this guy was a very attractive young black man. And when he came in, the client licked his lips. So they left him in there to do the rest of the presentation. Talking to some of my friends in D.C., some of these lobby firms specifically go out and hire from the bottom third of liberal arts colleges to pick the prettiest ones. It's basically legalized prostitution.
Sure.
Yeah. That show, there's that TV show with Kevin Spacey,
Yeah.
House of Cards. And people say that's, they say it's sort of a dark view of things. Oh, no. Oh, no, 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 no. No, I grew up in D.C. Let me tell you something. Those incidents that they show, I didn't know all of the incidents that they showed, but I was familiar with at least 2/3 of them. And no, they did not all happen in the same administration, but over a period of 20 years, those are all real incidents. That stuff happens. That's what it's really like. We're screwed.
Yeah, I hear you with that, man. Yeah,
Anyway.
we got a tough road ahead of us with all this stuff. That's for sure. Now,
Yeah.
wait, back to Xenu. Back to Xenu.
Okay.
Back to Xenu. Tell us the story.
Yeah.
What is the real story of Xenu? Because people would not believe it if they knew it. Tell us what it is in reality. What do they believe Xenu is?
Well, I'm under an injunction from a federal judge to not make copies of it. However, I can recite it by memory, and it goes like this. 76 million years ago, the evil ruler Xenu, in an effort to solve overpopulation in this sector of the Galactic Federation, invited the inhabitants in for an income tax audit, captured them, injected them with propylene glycol, that's antifreeze, froze the corpses, put them in little boxes, transported them to Earth in spaceships that looked like a DC-6. That's what Hubbard said, not me.
Okay.
Dropped the frozen corpses on volcanoes.
Right.
Then, or stacked them up at volcanoes.
Right.
Dropped hydrogen bombs into the volcanoes, and in the resulting maelstrom, an electronic ribbon came up from the implant station. And all of these disembodied spirits stuck to the ribbon or were pulled down and forced to watch crappy movies and implanted with pictures that showed them. Now, I want your listeners to pay attention to this next line. That showed them exactly what society was going to look like. See, all of the architecture of the past, the reason all these things look this way is because it was programmed in that electronic implant of all of those body thetans, all those spirits, which is the same thing the Ford Foundation was actually doing. Remember? Anyway, that'll be in the book. But these clusters are stuck all over you, Ed, Mr. Opperman. Yeah. You've got these clusters of dead space aliens stuck all over your body. And for $360,000, Scientology can get rid of them for you. What a deal. You know, in the fine print of the level, there's a line that says, anyone that doesn't have body thetans has later been shown to be loaded with them and will be required to do all of their previous training and auditing in Scientology again at their own expense.
So now, once you publish this, what happened to you? You were declared fair game.
Well, I had already been on their radar because I published some other material. I published the Spanish criminal indictment where the Spanish government...
Hello, it is Ryan, and I was on a flight the other day playing one of my favorite social spin slot games on ChumbaCasino.com. I looked over at the person sitting next to me, and you know what they were doing? They were also playing Chumba Casino. Coincidence? I think not. Everybody's loving having fun with it. Chumba Casino is home to hundreds of casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere, even at 30,000 feet. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com to claim your free welcome bonus. That's ChumbaCasino.com and live the Chumba life.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
Indicted them for inducement to suicide, simulation of a felony, i.e. they didn't actually commit a felony, but they made it look like somebody else committed a felony to get them in trouble.
And wait, to blackmail them or to really get them arrested? To blackmail them and to get them arrested?
Yeah, to get them arrested. You know,
Really?
I mean, they would stage what looked like a felony, and then the police would move in and then send the data to the police, and then the police prosecute them for whatever this crime was that was staged. This is what they did to Paulette Cooper.
Okay.
Paulette Cooper came out with a book on Scientology in '71, and what it was her boyfriend was actually working for Scientology, and had taken a piece of letterhead from her desk in her office, in her bedroom, from her desk in her bedroom. And that piece of letterhead, of Paulette's letterhead, was scotch taped to the back of a clipboard. And then a pretty girl knocked on the door one day, you know, "Oh, Paulette, hello, would you like to save the whales?" You know, and Paulette held the clipboard in her hand and signed, you know, her name to save the whales. Taped to the back of it was her letterhead, face down on the back. That put her fingerprints on the paper. They then typed a bomb threat to Henry Kissinger.
Wow.
And mailed it to him. Now, when the feds, of course, came to get her, you know, nobody believed her story. Would you? We got your fingerprints on the paper. You made the threat.
Yeah, that would be tough. That would be a tough hill.
She ended up taking truth serum, and they didn't stop the investigation, but they stopped the prosecution based on the truth serum story. And then when they raided Scientology in 1977, they found the actual program called Operation Freak Out that described how the job was done. It was all a charade. You see, Hubbard says that the only people that attack us are criminals, and they have a whole office filled with people whose job is to make that so.
Right. Gotcha. Okay, and then people are declared fair game, and you could do whatever you want to them. It's okay. Even break the law.
Well, right. Well, they tell their members that when you get the top of their chart, their gradation chart, and finish all of the stuff you do with Scientology, and have given them all your money, you'll achieve a state, of total freedom.
Right.
Well, the only total freedom you get in Scientology is the freedom to destroy your enemies without being disciplined by Scientology, which is written in their own materials. No Scientologists may be disciplined for anything they do to an enemy of Scientology.
Let me ask you a question. Now, are you familiar with the Process Church of the Final Judgment?
Yeah.
Okay, now they're an offshoot of Scientology.
Yeah.
Okay, now what do you come up with that?
That's Grimstone and it's out, right?
The Grimson, yeah, and I saw a memo.
Grimstone, those guys were ex-Scientologists from London organization.
Right.
Number one. And I don't know whether, what's his name? Manson was a member of the Process Church. I know that his picture appeared on the cover of their magazine one month. Process Church was basically Scientology crap. The same stuff, different story. See, same techniques, different short story.
Okay.
Manson himself at the Spahn Ranch. I'm trying to think of the fellow's name. The guy that wrote The Realist years ago.
Ed Sanders.
I wish I could think of it. Huh? The Realist.
Ed Sanders.
Before him, this is back in the 70s. Anyway, starts with a K. Krasner. Paul
Krasner. Okay, sure.
They sued Paul Krasner. Yeah, they sued Paul Krasner because in one of his issues he said that there was an e-meter at the Spahn Ranch. Well, there was an e-meter at the Spahn Ranch, and he fought it, and they finally dropped the suit. Manson practiced Scientology when he was in prison, and actually took a couple of the basic courses in Los Angeles, which are basically, they tell you, the story they tell you is you're going to come in and learn how to confront other people. But what you're actually practicing are, hypnotic techniques that they get you to do to each other. I mean, sure, there's a story of what you think you're doing, but you don't have to tell somebody you're hypnotizing them to hypnotize them. For example, to create a very deep trance, and if your listeners want to go ahead and go into a trance now, they can. Just relax. I'm not going to tell you to send me money yet.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
But well, all you have to do is ask somebody to imagine something that's moving that isn't really there. Like a ball rolling across the floor. Imagine an orange on the floor. An orange falls off the table, bounces twice, and goes out the door. Now, imagine the orange falling off the table and bouncing twice and going out the door. And do that 3 or 4 times. You don't need me to say it. You can just sit there and do that. And you'll find yourself going into a very suggestible trance. This is a deep trance technique described in advanced clinical hypnosis in a book written in the 1930s, for God's sake. All right? And it also says you don't have to tell them you're hypnotizing them. You can make up a story. And in the story, you use some kind of story and setting, anything necessary to get the person to imagine something that is moving, that is not really there, and do it repetitively. That is what Scientology's, quote, upper levels are all about. You do that over and over and over again, and that's interspersed with suggestions and desensitizing phrases. Like, there's one that I think they may have removed it since I started talking about it, but there was one that went something like, mock up a machine for destroying bodies, now throw it away. You do this over and over again in a trance. That's creepy stuff,
Yeah.
You're basically creating a person that is operationally emulating a psychopath. Now, William Sargent, back in World War II, was the head of psychiatry in Britain. And they were having big problems because the soldiers would come back from Rommel's blitzkriegs. They'd come back to the medical tent and they were like vegetables. They were a mess because what they experienced was so over the top compared to anything they'd experienced previously. They were shell-shocked. And this Dr. William Sargent, who was a clinician, there was a therapy that had been tried called abreactive therapy, where you have the person, it's kind of like Dianetics, you tell the person to, go back to the incident and scan through it and then talk about it for a while, and you get off some of the upset, and then you find an earlier incident, that's like it, and you do the same thing. If you can't find any incidents in abreactive therapy, or, the person, the incident that screwed them up so bad they can't approach it at all, you tell them to imagine an incident, make one up. So they would make up an incident and then act like it was real. And this made them feel better. The problem is it took, you had to teach a person a great deal of psychology to be able to run this process, this technique called abreactive therapy. And they didn't have a lot of time, and it didn't work that well anyway. So we needed another solution. So we came up with shock therapy, electroconvulsive shock therapy. But there's also insulin shock. When he talks about shock therapy, the shock therapy goes back to Pavlovian conditioning.
Ryan Seacrest here. When you have a busy schedule, it's important to maximize your downtime. One of the best ways to do that is by going to ChumbaCasino.com. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino games like spin slots, bingo, and solitaire that you can play for free for a chance to redeem some serious prizes. So hop on to ChumbaCasino.com now and live the Chumba life. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
You see, you're going to have to stop me some point if I go too deep, but I need to explain the Pavlov thing and shock therapy. And Pavlov, I'm not going to explain all of Pavlov's stuff, but he had all these dogs and he conditioned them, and they would salivate, when the bell was rung, whether they saw the food or not. And one winter, the Volga was frozen over, and there was a spring thaw, and the ice jammed up under the bridge, and the research room where they had all the dogs was flooding with icy water from the Volga. And by the time the assistants, his lab guys got into the room, they had to, the dogs were absolutely freaked out, swimming in ice water with their noses at the tops of their cages. And then they had to pull the terrified dogs down through the ice water to get them out of the cages, down to the cage door. What they found was the dogs lost all of their prior conditioning from that shock. And that is the discovery which is the basis for shock therapy. Did that make sense to you?
Yes, it does, yeah.
All right. Anyway, so William Sargent started using shock therapy instead. Well, this brings us back to Dianetics. Now, Hubbard brags that he was able to write Dianetics in a few weeks he put a roll of telex paper in the typewriter and just cranked it out.
Right.
Well, after I'd gotten all that media for posting, Xenu and the space cooties to the internet, and been sued, and I got, there was a lot of TV and stuff, it was a lot of media. I lost my voice, not as quickly as I'm doing this evening, but I lost my voice from so many interviews. And this fellow, okay, wait a minute. All right, now this ties back to Carroll, whose father was the president of GW, who previously worked at Operation Paper. One of his professors, see, the president of George Washington University would bring professors home for dinner. Well, one of them told a story about a missing student that had disappeared. And this was a Professor Moselle, M-O-S-E-L. He was a professor of psychology, and this student had gone missing. And he went looking for him, and he found him in an insane asylum called St. Elizabeth's Mental Hospital, and the student's name was L. Ron Hubbard. He said he found his student in a striped jacket, in a padded cell, screaming that he was Jesus Christ.
That's L. Ron Hubbard was there in the straight jacket.
Yeah.
I never heard that story. Okay, go ahead.
So, you see, when you look at well, I know, I never heard it either.
Go ahead.
But I'm just telling you how it was relayed to me, all right?
Yeah.
Now, after all of the media, remember, I got the call from Bruce in 2005, okay? And he told me the story about Dr. Moselle. Well, after all of the media, I got a phone call from a man with an elegant voice. This fella, could have been a professor, but whatever he was, this fella was used to using his voice and speaking in an articulate manner. And this old, plus he was very old. And he said, young man, I've been reading about you in the paper. And I said, okay, I'm glad you have. What can I do for you? And he goes, would you like to know where Hubbard got the idea for Dianetics? And I said, boy, would I. All right? And he told me, he said that when Hubbard was in a Navy hospital, a visiting clinician had a paper that he was working on, and he passed it out to the guys that were sitting around in the hospital to read, to get their opinions. And Hubbard kept his. And I said, do you know the name of the clinician? And he said no. But it was a visiting clinician, and gave him the paper. So I got a copy, and then a lady named
Wait, you got a
Ida
copy of that
Pamber,
report? You got a copy of
who
that
was
paper?
Of William Sargent's book?
No, you said you got a copy of the paper that they gave to L. Ron Hubbard?
Oh no, I don't have a copy of the paper.
Okay, of the book. Okay, go ahead.
But a few years later, a lady, Ida Pamber, who was part of the first anti-cult group in America called Citizens Freedom Foundation,
Right.
handed me a book by a clinician named Dr. William Sargant, Sargant, the head of psychiatry in England. I was quoting from his book, telling you about abreactive therapy, how similar it is to Dianetics, okay?
Okay.
Anyway, when I read that book, I realized that the first half of Dianetics, including the way the chapters are laid out, and all of the subjects discussed, are all in the first half of William Sargant's book, Battle for the Mind,
Gotcha.
which was published in 1955, but I bet you in 1945, it was that paper he was handing out. And it has to be the same thing, because he's the only guy I've run into who's a clinician. And this fella that tipped me off to it, I believe, was Dr. Moselle, who at the time that he called me was the retired head of the entire psychology department at George Washington University. So Hubbard got the ideas for Dianetics, which is abreactive therapy, but unlike abreactive therapy where they tell you the truth, they tell you to imagine an incident, Hubbard just keeps telling you to go earlier, and then you start imagining stuff from other lives. And then he told us that all that stuff was real, so you end up with all of this space opera, Buck Rogers stories that people are making up, and then he can sell us more of his science fiction. Clever man. But Dianetics is closest to abreactive therapy, but turned on its head. And anyone that reads the head of psychiatry in UK during World War II, William Sargant's book, Battle for the Mind, and looks at compare the first half of his book to the first half of Dianetics, it's unmistakable. All the same topics, except some of them are turned inside out and upside down to suit Hubbard's story that he invented it. Now, he couldn't say that he was doing psychology or psychiatry because it would have to be regulated by, he'd have to be a doctor and it would be regulated. He couldn't call it hypnosis because that's regulated too. So he called it Dianetics.
Science fiction.
And said, I invented it, which is a lie.
But now,
it was just more science fiction.
So now that means, though, that would be a theory then, that L. Ron Hubbard was not an agent of some type of Nazi background or occult background, Jack Parsons and these guys and Crowley and all this, but instead he was just a common con man thief who stole someone else's ideas and published it. But how could that be when he had all these kind of connections to these serious occult characters who went on with serious, Satanism kind of stuff, man? You know what I mean?
I understand. As far as government connections,
Yeah.
Scientology, all I have are shadows. I don't have a smoking gun. But the shadows are unmistakable. And, if you view Scientology as if it was just for a moment, just have your audience consider Scientology, hypothetically, as a proof of concept for the control mechanisms of the New World Order.
Okay.
Whoa. Suddenly it makes sense. Especially if you know enough about Scientology, you can recognize the methods that Hubbard uses to get people to accept that they have something they do not have, a reactive mind, and accept something they do not have called engrams.
Hello, it is Ryan, and I was on a flight the other day playing one of my favorite social spin slot games on chumbacasino.com. I looked over at the person sitting next to me, and you know what they were doing? They were also playing Chumba Casino. Coincidence? I think not. Everybody's loving having fun with it. Chumba Casino is home to hundreds of casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere, even at 30,000 feet. So sign up now at chumbacasino.com to claim your free welcome bonus. That's chumbacasino.com and live the Chumba life.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
And believe all of this rubbish, and it's all just covert hypnosis. All of these same techniques are in use in the society at this time.
Right.
If you've listened to Obama speak, I don't know about you, but when I listen to him, he doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I know what you mean. But
Quite
not just him, all of them.
Yeah, he does. No, all of them.
Yeah.
They don't make sense when they talk.
Yeah. Little triggers. They
That
give you little
is
triggers.
a technique
Yeah.
called the confusion technique.
Right.
And it is described in a interrogation manual published by the CIA called the Kubark Interrogation Manual. And on page 45 of the Kubark Interrogation Manual, it is the confusion technique. And it is titled Alice in Wonderland.
Really?
And Scientology uses Alice in Wonderland in their introductory course.
Oh boy,
And at the time he came out with that course, that document was classified. The
Really?
other weird connection is a guy named. They used to sell a book called How to Live Though an Executive. The man who wrote it was Richard DeMille. I think he was Cecil B. DeMille's cousin, or the other way around. I think Cecil B.'s cousin was Richard DeMille. Well, Richard DeMille was a young man around Hubbard right at the beginning, and then he's written out of history. But they did publish this book called How to Live Though an Executive that was being sold up until about the 1980, or maybe 86. And Richard DeMille showed up briefly on a CIA FOIA page as a contractor to the Central Intelligence Agency in 1969 for doing some kind of psychological research, which I thought a little odd. The other oddity about Richard DeMille is, some books came out trashing Carlos Castaneda.
Okay.
Well, they were written by Richard DeMille also. Interesting fellow. There's a lot more in the book that's very bizarre about him. All right, anyway, but all I have is shadows.
Right.
I mean, the technology was the technology that built the Third Reich. We've got the head of psychology for OSS during World War II, who's saying that Hitler is the greatest hypnotist of our era. And then you've got Dianetics that suddenly appears in 1950, and it's all bleeding hypnosis. It's all hypnosis and suggestion and outright lies. Ralph Slater, a stage hypnotist, very famous. This man played Carnegie Hall 7 times, approaching the winter of 1949 and 1950. And then hypnosis starts to disappear from the public psyche, and it's replaced with Dianetics, which the old hypnotists describe as the same old sofa with new upholstery.
Very interesting.
All right? It's just hypnosis.
Let me hit you with this, though, because we have 13 minutes left. And in 13 minutes, we're going to drop 2 stations. We'll still be on a bunch of stations. A lot of people will still be hearing us. But is there anything you want to...
Oh, listen, I could go on. I could go on for 10 or 12 hours.
We're going on for another hour after that.
I just skipped over little bits of it, all right?
But we're going to drop some of the audience, though, in 13 minutes. Do you want to leave them with anything?
All right.
Because what I'd like to get into, though, real quick, is the kind of harassment and attacks that you came under for revealing this information.
For a couple of years, they rented the house across the street.
See?
Put me under surveillance. Had my trash stolen. You know, they'll take your trash and go through it to get intelligence. They refer to it as a D-line for dumpster diving.
Sure.
I've been followed. I've been, you have people banging on the door in the middle of the night, and then you go there and they're gone. I had a report sent to the FBI that I was going to black out the internet, and 2 agents from the FBI, one Thomas O'Connor from the anti-terrorist unit in D.C., came in and knocked on my door one day, and contrary to what my lawyer told me, I just said, "Come on in, guys, sit down." You know?
Yeah.
Does the CIA really refer to you guys as fan belt inspectors? Anyway, no, we've got along fine. I was flattered that they thought I would be capable of blacking out the internet, but they spent 3 hours there, and I explained the whole Scientology routine to them. I used to mail out, innocent, links to my website, short one-liners that people could read on postcards and mail them out to Scientologists, Scientology organizations, in hopes that one of these poor hypnotized guys would read it and maybe remember the website and maybe look at it, And I had, of course, they called the U.S. Postal Inspectors and said that was hate mail. So I've had two U.S. Postal Inspectors sitting on my couch for an afternoon. And I said, they said, "We got a complaint about hate mail." I said, "Oh, did they give you a copy of the mail they're complaining about?" And they said, "Oh, no, they didn't." I said, "Oh, good. Well, I have a folder here of everything I've mailed out. Here, why don't you guys sit down and take a look?" So they went through it all, and they said, "This doesn't look like hate mail." And I went, "Very good. May I make a complaint about Scientology wasting your time?"
Good luck with that. U.S. Postal Inspectors are a breed of their own. Try and make a complaint about something to them and see if you get anywhere with them. Nothing. Good luck with that. They're no help at all to the average person.
Well, no, they take hate mail, because it's considered terrorist activity or whatever. The thing about Scientology is the technology is the same technology used to create terrorists. It can remove a function. It can render your conscience non-functional. This is a technology for creating terrorists. It creates the mindset.
Right.
And I would swear to that under penalty of perjury. And if anybody questioned me, I could go on with citations for days and show how that's true.
What other kind of harassment?
This is what we're dealing with.
Yeah, what other kind of harassment did you get?
I got set up with, I had the honeypot trap used on me.
Okay.
I believe they set me up with a lovely woman who was coming into a great deal of money. Twice what I had from selling my house. Between us, we'd be practically millionaires. And that was more stressful than the litigation and getting out of that marriage alive with any money left at all.
Now, how much did your lawyers cost you?
That was a horror story.
Your lawyers, did they do it for free, or what did that cost you?
Oh, no, the law firm is gone, But what's interesting is the lawyers that did my case in 1995 are the ones that were dealing with Scientology when they were sending the letters to HBO.
Right.
Jay Warren Brown and Mike Levine, two brilliant guys, and they know exactly what they're dealing with in Scientology. But I had insurance as a director for Fight Against Coercive Tactics Network, and we had $1 million worth of frivolous litigation insurance, and then $1 million of director's indemnity, which we had to sue them for to get them to pay for more litigation. And I think I still owe that first law firm a couple of $100,000, but they said they weren't coming after me unless I hit the lottery.
Gotcha. Imagine if you didn't have that
But the
insurance.
bills that were going by. Oh, I would have. Let me tell you something.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, they didn't know that I had the insurance. All right, they thought they were just going to steamroll me. They came at 9:30 in the morning, and during the raid, the president of Religious Technology Corporation.
Hello, it is Ryan, and we could all use an extra bright spot in our day, couldn't we? Just to make up for things like sitting in traffic, doing the dishes, counting your steps, all the mundane stuff. That is why I'm such a big fan of Chumba Casino. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere with daily bonuses. That should brighten your day a little. Actually, a lot. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com. That's ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
I can't believe the name is gone now. Anyway, the president of RTC, Religious McShane, Warren McShane, and a fellow named Alan C. Cartwright, and one other fellow whose name I don't remember, spent almost 30 minutes in my bathroom with the door shut. I had a friend there who was running for county board, a lawyer, Amy Bascaran, who had come with a video camera to video the whole thing. And afterwards she said, well, after I told her what happened, she said, I wondered what they were doing in there for 30 minutes because on Sunday night I brushed my teeth and I started tripping. It was LSD and something else. Had I not done LSD in the 60s, I would have thought I was going insane.
Yeah, I could imagine.
They had me down for accelerated video deposition on the coming Tuesday. And can you imagine what I would have looked like if I had been up for 3 days and then shown up for that video deposition? That would have been the end of the case and the end of me and my reputation. Because they'd have this video of this crazy man who'd been, whacked out on whatever they put on my toothpaste for 3 days.
Right.
But, a law firm stopped the Hogan and Hartson, a lawyer named Corin Revere, who used to work for the FCC, stepped up to the plate and stopped that. And because I'm kind of frugal, because if I don't spend the money I make, I have more time to read and do the things that I think need to be done in society. So I don't use a whole lot of toothpaste. So I just use a little smidgen of the stuff.
Okay. Yeah, save up on toothpaste.
People would say, you're crazy. Why don't you, how on television they show this big glob that you put on,
Right, okay.
Well, you have to understand who's giving you the advice, the people that want you to buy more of it. Anyway, I just use a little smidgen of it. So I just used a little smidgen of it, and I got in bed that night, and stuff starts moving on the ceiling. And I went, and it was like a panic attack. And it was more than LSD. There was something else in there.
Right.
But the tests at the time were almost $700. And who's to say I just didn't do it to entrap them?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I know what you mean.
But, so I plus trying to explain it to the police while you're messed up on the stuff really didn't go over too well.
Right.
But that's the kinds of stuff they do, and I'm not the only one. Another guy, Mike McCarthy, that worked for their Dirty Tricks division he isn't the one that did it, but they dosed a psychiatrist before they were going to give a presentation about cults, so that the person wouldn't be able to give the presentation, and they didn't give the presentation. And I believe that they dosed that girl Lisa McPherson in order to make her look crazy before the court case even happened and before she died. They use chlorohydrate as part of their regular regimen, but they don't tell you that. They only do it after you freak out and they try to keep you in isolation. They will take you to a doctor and get you dosed with chlorohydrate, or do it themselves if they can get it. I think they do it so much that at one point David Miscavige, whenever he would show up, would have a piece of plastic over his cup of water.
Oh, really?
The only people that do that are the people. Yeah. Now, why would you do that?
Because he knows.
Because you know that the stuff's around.
Right.
Because you used it on a guy named Art during the raid,
Yeah.
And you're thinking they're going to dose you. I mean, but this is a guy that just said, just let him die about his dad. The PI thought he was having a heart attack. This is what we're dealing with. We're dealing with psychopaths. Now, there's nothing wrong with hypnosis. Hypnosis is wonderful stuff, but not when the operator of your trance is a psychopath. Got it?
Got it. Listen,
hypnosis is part of life,
brother. We're 2 minutes before the break.
Playing. All right. Anyway, hypnosis is a wonderful thing, but you have to be the one running your trance. And if you ever let anybody else run your trance, make sure it's a licensed operator, an ethical operator, not a con man who is a science fiction writer trying to make a buck. The end.
So like I was saying, man, we're going to drop a couple of stations. Do you want to tell anybody where they can find you, your website, if they want to get a hold of your book? Someone wants to interview you next week, where can they get a hold of you?
I've got the wrong phone numbers on my website. I have been hard to find, and the media got to me the last time there was a big brouhaha, and I got burned out on it.
I got you.
And but I think I'm feeling strong to talk to people now. But I'm on Facebook, Arnaldo Lerma. The website is lermanet.com. But don't use the phone numbers there. But the PayPal button works if anybody just hit the lottery and wants to help out. And the book is coming, and I guess you'll hear about it here.
Yeah, definitely. I will definitely make an announcement for you. The link to the book will be up on the Opperman Report blog. This show will be up on YouTube. It'll be up on iHeart. It'll be on Spreaker. It'll be all over the place. So we're here tonight with Arnaldo, Arnie Lerma. Fascinating guy. I'm going to ask you some questions when we get back because I've done a little research in this topic myself. And one of the things I noticed, okay, and just hold off until we get back, is that in the O.J. Simpson trial. What's that? One of the things I noticed.
Just said, fine, go for it.
Yeah, was in the O.J. Simpson trial that there was an extraordinary number of people involved in that trial, and the news coverage of the trial, and the police officers in the trial, and the witnesses, and the lawyers, the prosecutors, that were all members of the cult of Scientology, and even some with connections to Manson and connections to the Process Church. Have you noticed anything like that?
No, actually, that didn't.
Okay, well then what did?
So I can't help you on that one.
What did catch your attention?
I mean, if you want to talk about litigation tactics, what money looks like in a courtroom, that's what it looks like.
Okay. Because, one interesting thing was Marsha Clark's ex-husband was shot by their Scientologist pastor. And that ex-husband, too, as well, was in a weekly poker game with O.J. Simpson.
Was this before or after?
Wait a minute. You're talking about...
Yeah.
Are you talking about the one in Denver or Colorado?
No.
Where the OT shot some guy?
No, I'm talking about Marsha Clark, the one who performed, the Scientology pastor that performed her wedding, shot her ex-husband. Right. And her ex-husband was at a weekly poker game with O.J. Simpson and owed him money at the time of the trial. And if you remember, too, he also made a stink, too, about custody of the kids during the trial. He set up litigation about fighting for custody and complaining about, what's her name, Marcia Clark, not being with the kids while she was at the trial and having them with a babysitter. That was one of his things. But anyway, listen, if you're not firsthand familiar with that, don't worry about it. We got a couple of callers.
No, I'm not.
Okay, man. I know, there's a lot there, so it'll blow your mind. But we had a couple of callers, regular callers. Mike Gray is the host of Parlay, another radio show on CJ Moore's radio on Thursday nights. And also JP, who is the host of Journeys with JP, and he owns a couple of radio stations as well. So, Mike, what kind of question do you have for our guest, Arnie Lerma?
Oh, Arnie, hi, how you doing?
Oh,
Arnie?
I felt better 20 years ago, but I'm getting by.
Oh, okay. Well, you look fantastic.
Arnie.
Arnie, right. Hey, boy, I had a ton of questions. By the way, Christopher Darden was dating Marcia Clark during that trial, remember?
Yeah, they were having sex for a while. You might remember, too, my guest that I had on who was OJ's doctor and was also Christopher Darden's doctor. That guest I had, I think his name was Johnson. It's a great show. It's 6 hours long. And we get into all that gossip that went on behind the scenes with all that stuff, with baby mamas and all kinds of stuff with Darden and that whole crew. Yeah.
One quick question I have is, what did you think about the movie The Master? And do you feel that the actor who played essentially L. Ron Hubbard, the guy who died, what was his name? Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Yeah.
Do you think that maybe he was murdered for portraying their Messiah?
I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised, but I didn't see the movie.
Ryan Seacrest here. When you have a busy schedule, it's important to maximize your downtime. One of the best ways to do that is by going to ChumbaCasino.com. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino games like spin slots, bingo, and solitaire that you can play for free for a chance to redeem some serious prizes. So hop on to ChumbaCasino.com now and live the Chumba life. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
See, I have not concerned myself. I'm not the one to go to about what's happening in the media with Scientology and this and that, because I have for the last maybe 15 years tried to concentrate on how is the trick done.
Right.
So I'm sorry I can't help you with these media kind of questions. But I'll tell you, there's plenty of people that know that stuff that I could refer you to.
Right.
Well, this is definitely a topic that we revisit all the time. So, Mike, any more questions?
Yeah, was the honeypot worth it?
Yeah, right.
Oh,
I guess so.
I really shouldn't comment on that, but I shouldn't have gotten involved.
Gotcha.
Right.
All right. It was a complete waste. It was worse than a waste. It was. Okay, I'll tell you the punchline. Okay, so I'm married to this gal, and I realize I have to end this and get out of it.
So basically, you're saying she never loved
divorce
you.
decree.
Wait, sir. She never loved you, right? She was actually
Well,
sent
let me
in.
finish.
Okay.
Well, no. Oh, well, I'm just going to tell you the punchline. I'm not going to get into the details.
Okay.
Okay.
The punchline. I got my divorce decree on the 4th of March of 2013. On the 5th of March, a bail bondsman was looking for 20 grand. And I showed him the divorce decree. And he almost cried. And, I said, well, pal, because she had skipped bail after getting busted in another county for something. And they never showed up. And I told him, we have a lot in common. But, we both got screwed by the same woman. But you only got screwed for 20 grand.
Right.
How were you so convinced that yeah, great joke. But listen, how were you so convinced though that she was placed in your life by Scientology? Could she have been approached after she got? Maybe she got involved in your life legitimately, and then they co-opted her, and they got some blackmail on her. They bribed her, and then they turned her against you.
That's a possibility. That's possible.
Okay.
I have run that scenario in my mind. I mean, all I have are shadows.
I got you, man. Okay, I was infiltrated myself. Okay, I was involved in a big case with Sarah Palin and Todd Palin, the congressional investigation, and my own life was, I know what you're talking about, man. Okay, trust me about the garbage being stolen. I've been down the same roads, brother. Okay, now we're joined by JP, and JP's been researching coincidentally all week long about this Nazi stuff. JP, what kind of questions you got for our guest?
Oh, boy.
Oh, wow. Greetings. Thank you, sir. Please stay alive. Please stay alive. Please publish your book. If you need a proofreader, I will read it for you. I'll read it aloud for you. This is brilliant stuff. Right. Okay. So I've been studying the Glock and the Nazi time traveling experiments, and I don't know if you know about the Sands of Time material. Anyway, all about the
I read it.
You read the Sands of Time. Excellent.
Oh, you did, huh?
Yeah, great stuff. I really recommend it. I've just I've read out the Glock on my book on my site. And anyway, so here's the question. All right, you briefly touched on it, and you're basically saying, and this is really going to take it right off the planet, right? Because this is the connection between the Sumi, who are the Aldebaranian inhabitants who have been channeling telepathic messages through the Vrildarman. And so, are you saying that the Scientologists still have the Vrildarman somewhere hidden in the back, or in an underground base, or on some planet, or do the Scientologists have a secret space program themselves? Boom.
Oh, you know what? We lost our connection. I think we lost our connection to Arnie. We lost our.
Yeah, I bet we did.
Yeah, right.
I bet we
second.
did, because those are such pertinent questions. It's unbelievable. You wouldn't understand. Well, you may understand why, how, and exactly how pertinent those questions are. So I have no. There you go.
You're back, brother.
So,
hey, how are you?
Did you get any of that?
No, start over. He lost it.
No, I didn't hear a word.
Yeah, he lost it right as soon as you started. So go with the compliments. Start with the compliments again. He wants to hear that twice. Okay.
All right, I love it. I want to have you on my show. I want you to stay alive as much as you possibly can, and please publish your book. And I will read it if your voice is tired. I'll read it for you. But my question is about the Aldebaranians.
Well, what you could do right now
is what?
Google Lerma.net and
got
paperclip, and you'll get a document. All right.
Okay.
Yeah, JP, I think we got some echo on the back of
there's
your
a
speaker.
bad echo.
Yeah, JP, I think it's come from you. You got speakers in the background?
I get an echo when other people are talking.
I think I might have two things open here. Hold on.
Okay, but it doesn't matter. Anyway, so my question, sir, is could you talk about the Vrildarman? What happened to the Vrildarman after they did they escape to the inner core of the Scientologists through Operation Paperclip, and are they still channeling the Aldebaranian Sumi? And what's the state of play with the Scientology secret space program?
I don't know that there is a Scientology secret space program. All right. Okay. And you're going to have to repeat that first part of that question again, because all right, something's wrong.
Well,
No.
I have a question.
No, wait, hold up, Mike.
Okay.
JP, again, what was that about the Vril program?
Listen,
yeah. Go ahead, Arnie.
Can we hang up and you call me back again and we set this up again? Because this is not working well right now.
Okay, no sweat. I'll reconnect with you in a second, okay? You know what? I'm going to reconnect with everyone. I'm going to drop the whole call and call everybody back. So everybody sit tight. We'll be I can talk while I'm dropping these guys.
Oh.
Okay. We'll shop everybody, bring them all back, and make a nice little connection here. Call the group. I think I'm still on. Yeah, I'm on the air. We don't need these guys. I'll do all the talking. We got Arnie Lerma, fascinating guy from Scientology. Fought the Scientologists, exposed them. We got Arnie back right now. We got our callers. Arnie, you sound good now.
All right, I'm back. Yeah.
Yeah. And that happens sometimes with the Skype connection. I also got a little deal going on right now where when I get a phone call, my internet goes off. I believe that or not, okay? But JP, can you repeat your question there for Mr. Lerma?
Okay. Well, first of all, Ed, you've got a problem on your line. That's why there's not enough voltage to keep the whole thing going. So you need to get your line physically checked out.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
That might be why you've got a problem with your internet.
Gotcha.
Anyway, so Arnie, once again, thank you very much for. And I'll make the question as brief as I can. You were talking about the connection that the Nazis had with ETs and star systems and the Aldebaranian Sumis. Do the Scientologists? You were implying before that the Scientologists had the connection to the same source as that. So, are you saying that the Scientologists have an inner connection with the Sumi race of Aldebaran, and therefore are a continuation of the Babylonian Empire? No. Okay, so what were you saying about the Nazis?
Scientology thing is making money. All right. The only technology there is the technology of controlling what a person believes to be true. The way it looks to me is that if I view Scientology and everything that its organization does as a test bed for the control mechanisms to control society, it makes sense. They have tried to be perceived as being involved in remote viewing, but they're not really. I pulled 1 inch of paper from the Bethesda National, what is it? Yeah, the National Archives in Bethesda. I got 1 inch of paper from the Stanford Remote Viewing Project. I went through every page of this stuff. There wasn't anything remotely Scientological.
Ryan Seacrest here. When you have a busy schedule, it's important to maximize your downtime. One of the best ways to do that is by going to ChumbaCasino.com. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino games like spin slots, bingo, and solitaire that you can play for free for a chance to redeem some serious prizes. So hop on to ChumbaCasino.com now and live the Chumba life. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
My estimation of Scientology and psychic phenomena is this. Certain psychic phenomena are associated with trance and hypnosis. That's it. I believe Scientology was being used as bait to get an intelligence function into other countries' remote viewing projects. It was bait. It was like, you're going fishing.
But Arnie,
it sounded like it might be something, but it wasn't.
The big names in remote viewing, though, are all Scientologists, aren't they? They all have some kind of Scientology connection. Ed Dames, all these guys, no?
Well, they would like
Ingo
you to
Swann?
believe that.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you. Well, I don't know. When I read I've read one of Ed Dames' books on remote viewing, and there's nothing in there remotely Scientological. Ingo Swann's autobiography, which was on the net at one point, he said that he never even considered himself a Scientologist.
Yeah.
He may have said different things at different times, but he said that back then they were desperate and trying anything and everything, even Scientology.
Okay, now one more thing before I forget, guys, and please forgive me. But now there was also too the L. Ron Hubbard claimed to be channeling some small ET kind of creature. I think his name was Thetan. What? Am I correct? Or...
No.
Okay.
No, I think what that is, you're thinking of Lamb or whatever it is.
Right. Okay.
Or
right.
Crowley.
Oh, yeah, okay, you're right.
All right?
Okay,
Hubbard
sorry.
wasn't channeling.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that's Crowley's shtick. Okay. It seems in Scientology that any contact psychically with any other intelligences appears to be discouraged.
Oh.
You know? Yeah. It's not everything about Scientology is to make it look like there's something there.
What about that ritual that's described by...
Have you read it?
Yeah, the ritual that was the Moonchild ritual that was described by Hubbard's son. What do you make of that? Do you believe that happened or what?
Well, yeah, I believe it happened. Do you know anything about the girl, Marjorie Cameron?
No, what can you tell us?
She was a big-time psychic in New York in the 40s. Well, you ought to look into her. She's actually the most interesting character of the three of them.
Okay.
Is Marjorie Cameron. She's described in a book called The Unobstructed Universe. Weird little book, strange story. I couldn't keep reading it, which is a good sign, but that doesn't mean there isn't information there. But I had to put that one down. But she was a big time socialite psychic, in Long Island back in the 40s and 50s. Big deal. Marjorie Cameron.
Well, if it's really interesting, what can you tell us about it, dude?
She was the big deal.
Okay. And do you believe she had a baby?
I couldn't tell you.
Okay.
Well, I don't know that either. Okay. There isn't a whole lot. There isn't a whole lot that Hubbard actually said about it, and he's lied about so many things. Why should I believe anything he says? And our good friend JPL, we're supposed to believe that this master of explosives was messing with mercury fulminate, which, if you know anything about explosives, you don't mess with it. But it would make a great short story if you wanted to get rid of the guy,
So do you think he might have lived through that and a staged death, or do you think they killed him?
I have no idea.
Okay.
Could have been staged.
Who
knows?
Didn't they say he sold secrets to the Israelis? Then they blew up the shack he was in with that mercury fulminate, and then a week later, didn't his big house burn down with his mom in it? Didn't his mom die? Or she ran into the fire afterwards?
I don't know.
All right, I have an insight.
What I did was,
go ahead, JP.
I followed the magic trail back into the Renaissance in order to understand techniques they used in Scientology, and I found some of them described in Ad Herenium, which predates, which was like BC. It's like 70 BC. Sometimes attributed to Socrates, but not really. It's magic is not knowing how the trick was done. As far as demonology goes and what they appear to be doing in Babylon working, I don't know, because I don't know that end of it. I will admit that I know some natural magic.
Oh, right. Now, let me ask you a question, because you mentioned to me in chat that you are a believer in magic. You are a practitioner right now of magic?
Well, magic, my definition of magic is not knowing how the trick was done.
Okay.
What people call magic. And, there's like demonic magic and natural magic. Natural magic is just using items that have certain attributes to, focus your intent, to focus the will. It can all be described as using physical tools to focus your trance. All right? There's nothing wrong with doing that. People do that all the time. Whether they know it or not, they do that. A lucky charm. That's just to focus. That's just using something in the physical world to focus an auto-suggestion. I will be lucky. You see?
questions
It's
asked?
not really magic. It's just how the trick is done. But if you want to get a lot of followers, you do a lot of hocus pocus, and you set off something that makes a big flash and have some special effects. Everybody goes ooh and ah and says it's wonderful, and they will all tell their friends that you climbed the rope and it wasn't attached to anything. Hubbard used to do that stuff to people when they'd visit him in his cabin.
He would climb a rope?
Hypnotic. You do a series of suggestions, and they would be convinced that something happened when they were in there. Until they talked to me, and I explained what we actually did. And then they go, oh, so he didn't have super-duper powers.
Yeah.
Got it?
I read in the thing where when he had the falling out with Crowley and Parsons, that they were actually casting spells on each other and sending demons to attack each other. That's in Wikipedia.
Yeah, well, okay. What do you want me to say? I mean, like, really? Or,
it wasn't a question, I guess.
No.
Can
Would
I
you
come
like
in
to
now?
Yeah,
do
JP,
that
go
later
ahead.
instead of me?
What? I'm sorry?
Well, I don't know what you're asking.
Go ahead, JP.
Look, this is really important. This is one of the reasons. Here's the thing. Okay, so it's really important. So I'm just gonna say the words. The key thing that came out of this book that I've been reading about the Glock was the fuel source. The fuel source of this thing is what's known in what the channels were saying, what the Aldebaranian was saying, is it's called vril, and it's an unstable isotope of mercury. Okay, and in common parlance these days, it's called red mercury. Red mercury, and it's also had a connection. Yeah, and it's also had a connection now, not with Zahi Hawass, the other guy. He's been. You can take it as a life enhancer because it's like concentrated chi. Mercury is like you have to boil it in a plutonium reactor for weeks under thousands of atmospheres to get this stuff. But once you've got it, you've got this purple liquid, and it's $6 million a gram. And the reason that it's needed is because it's used in anti-gravity craft. Because if you rotate this stuff, because it's magnetic and it's liquid, if you rotate it under pressure and you counter-rotate it, it causes gravity waves, which means you've got lift, you've got a UFO. And so, and they call that vril. And this is what obviously, if it's so expensive, they need tons, 3 tons to make a UFO, right? And it's $6 million a gram. So what do you know about that?
It is Ryan Seacrest here. There was a recent social media trend which consisted of flying on a plane with no music, no movies, no entertainment. But a better trend would be going to chumbacasino.com. It's like having a mini social casino in your pocket. Chumba Casino has over 100 online casino-style games, all absolutely free. It's the most fun you can have online and on a plane. So grab your free welcome bonus now at chumbacasino.com. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
I know that it's an isotope, and I know that it's used for nuclear triggers for mini nukes.
And where did you learn that?
Its,
Where'd you learn that?
Well, okay. Let me explain something.
Yeah.
You know how they used to put tetraethyl lead in gasoline to raise octane?
Yeah.
Remember?
Yeah.
Do you know how it raised octane? What it did?
No idea.
What did it do?
I have no idea.
Okay. Because of the weight, because of the inertia of mercury, it would slow down the propagation of the wavefront from the spark because of its physical weight. That's how it raised octane.
Okay.
By making it burn a little slower. It ain't rocket science.
Well,
all right?
It sort of
they
is.
do the same thing with these little. Yeah, know, they do the same thing with these mini dukes. If you could slow down the expansion of the explosive charge around the core on the outside, you're increasing the peak pressure on the inside. It's just like tetraethyl lead. But with the magnetic component, I bet it's even fancier. I don't know.
But my question to you is, where are you learning all this from? What is your background that you have this kind of knowledge?
I read a lot.
Okay.
I'm annoying.
Okay. All right.
Weird science and freaking magic.
I'm the kind of guy that everybody hated. All right. They all hated me in school. In third grade, they took me aside. They said, "You don't have to listen to the teacher. You can do anything you want." I took some tests and it scared them. And I said, "Well, what could I do?" And they said, "What would you like to do?" I said, I'd like to build a windmill." So they gave me an erector set, and I sat there looking out the window at the park while everybody else was in class doing their class, and everybody hated me. It's been like that my whole life. They still hate me. I used to take care of electronic stuff for the Institute for Defense Analysis. He had a half dozen PhDs that were his think tank, and I had some idea how to do something. So he said, General Walter Smith, brilliant guy. He's now at the National Research Archive or something like that. Anyway, he said, show this to my guy. So he brings up his crew of, smartest guys in the room and had me explain it to them. And each of them had some objections, and I, handled them. And they all agreed, okay, we're going to do it my way. They all leave. General Walter Smith took me by the elbow, and he says, "Young man, I'll have you know those 6 gentlemen have never agreed on anything. Well done. You have the job." But that's the way it's been for me. I've been this annoying. It's just the way it is. I've never looked for a job in my life. I sort of fall into work and do some stuff. I fix things.
Arnie, I get you.
I don't call repairmen. I fix everything.
Yeah, you fell into the Sea Org. You fell into the Sea Org. They're right there in L. Ron Hubbard's lap, for a reason.
And I was fixing crap for them. They couldn't make e-meters, so I built their bleeding e-meters and fixed that for them.
How's it work?
Oh, good question.
Now I do know something about this. I may not know a whole lot about, demonic conjuring, though I will give you guys this tip about demonic conjuring. The only handle a demon has on anyone is guilt. That's why cults like to install so much of it. Okay, that's from Huna. But where are we going? We're going to, the e-meter. Oh, you're going to love this.
Yeah.
The e-meter is basically the spin galvanometer function of a standard light detector. It's a bit more sensitive because it gives more surface area for the sensors, so you get less sweat and twitching results. You get more actual stress response. Both of those functions, whether it's the lie detector or the e-meter, aren't really lie detectors. They're stress meters. They will determine if you have a stress response to a question. The problem with these devices, when used in security, unless this is why they're used, is that that psychopaths who have no conscience don't have a stress response.
Yeah.
They'll sail right through these. But if you were running an organization and you wanted to have somebody that would do whatever it takes, you might use these devices, tell people it's for security, and the ones that got through would be the ones that got promotions because you knew they were sociopaths and would do anything you told them to do, as long as you paid them. Did you understand the import of what I just explained?
Yes, I did, and I have some experience myself with polygraphs and people who have taken them and people who have passed them that I knew were lying, and I agree with you.
Wow, I never thought
well,
of
take
that.
a Valium. Nothing will read.
Yeah, also, too, you can put a little tack in your shoe, And
listen, guys, it's a CIA maxim. It's a CIA maxim to the best place to hide something is right in front of you. I used to think that was my line. I learned that. I learned that from watching the stuff that happened to me until I read a book and found that, if I'm a CIA guy, and it turns out it's a CIA maxim. Best place to hide something's right in front of you.
In plain sight, yeah.
Plain sight. Mm-hmm.
Any more questions, guys?
All right, go on, Michael. Your turn.
No, go ahead, JP.
What do you want to know about the lie detectors?
What do you know?
Yeah, the e-meter. I mean,
yeah, well, like I said, it'll detect stress.
You perfected it, or what was your contribution to it?
Yeah, what did you contribute to this? Contribute. That's what we say in America. Contribute. Yeah.
What, the e-meter?
Yeah.
No, well, they were having trouble making them. They were backlogged, and I went in and figured out what the problems were, and they started making them again.
Yeah, I have a question. I mean,
even went to the manufacturer.
Go ahead, Mike.
The one thing I can't figure out is Scientology in the Illuminati or part of the Illuminati? Because it seems like the elite are kind of not on board with Scientology for, is there like a war between Scientology or Scientologists and the powers that be?
Up until Prism and Facebook and these things, and their, ability to sort through keywords and, sort of make pictures of people's character. The only way to look inside a mind was in Scientology. Scientology could get stuff out of people that you couldn't normally get out of people.
Oh, so is that why Scientology basically, they say that Scientology is losing its favor, right?
Well, there's a possibility that it's being allowed to go down because they don't need it anymore.
Yeah.
And it's such a freak show, it should hold everybody's attention almost as well as World War III would.
And L. Ron Hubbard's intent of starting this religion was to rule the world. Didn't he say that? That he told Crowley he was going to create a religion that would take over.
I think religion. And he said he wanted to smash his name into the history books.
Yeah.
I don't know that. I mean, he told us that we were going to take over the world. He did tell us that. But you can't be that dirty and take over the world, or could you? Hell, look at the neocons.
Yeah. What exactly is Tom Cruise to the Scientologists exactly? Is he their messiah, or do they consider him like the reincarnation of L. Ron Hubbard, or what is the deal
wait
there?
A second. What about these rumors that he's a lover of Miscavige?
Hello, it is Ryan, and we could all use an extra bright spot in our day, couldn't we? Just to make up for things like sitting in traffic, doing the dishes, counting your steps, all the mundane stuff. That is why I'm such a big fan of Chumba Casino. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere with daily bonuses. That should brighten your day a little. Actually, a lot. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com. That's ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
I didn't hear that.
They're pretty good friends. They seem to like each other a lot, and it's like a I would say it's like a circle jerk narcissist club.
Okay.
But it might be literal. I don't know.
Now, and also too,
they tend to massage each other's egos, but I really don't know anything about that. I mean, it's just we have fun making conjectures about it, just because I'm sure it irritates them to even talk about it.
Now, the wife has been missing for 6 years. Any news about? You have any info on that?
Well, I know she's been missing, but something was done to assure the authorities that she had a pulse. How's that? No, and I did not follow that. I have to stress that I have been trying to deconstruct how the mind control tricks were done. And I have traced a lot of this stuff back through history, and yeah, I had to go through magic to get there.
Okay. And your book is going to be like a step-by-step guide on how to do this, or to reveal it. What's the plan here? Wait, Arnie. Couldn't people take your book? Couldn't people take your book and use it for evil?
Absolutely. You could use it to build one hell of a cult.
Well, send me one, man.
The problem is we're already.
Yeah.
The problem is we're already in one.
I have a question.
United States.
Let me finish. Yeah.
Yeah, we're in a yeah, it's true.
And they're using all the same techniques as Scientology.
So tell us about the techniques and how to battle them.
Wait, I have a question. Do you converse with demons? I mean, do you invoke them, or when you're doing your magic?
No. During a deprogramming, I did a deprogramming in Omaha, and at the end of that, something, and it might have just been the stress, but something seemed like it appeared, and it freaked the hell out of me.
Oh, describe it.
Okay?
What do you got?
But no, this isn't something. I've read Patrick Harper's books, The Field Guide to, the Other World, and what happened to. I've had some events happen that have changed my views of the solidity and everything around us, and it has helped immensely to understand how some of the sillier tricks are being run on us.
You know, a dentist.
We don't have to go to demons. At least I would prefer not to. I mean, I've read all about them. I think it's really interesting, but what are they going to do for you? Give you power? The power you want is the power of truth.
Okay.
That's the power you want.
Well, there's a lot of Satanists out there who seem to, sacrifice people to them.
Well, I'm told that power. Yeah, well, I did read something about how if you take somebody's life in a certain way or something, you're supposed to get additional power from having done that. But I wouldn't know about that.
Okay.
I believe that truth cuts like a knife, and there's really not much people can do about it. What are they going to do? Kill you? I believe the body is just like the computer. The computer is how we, read on the net and talk to each other and all that. Right. But the body's how we do the same thing in the physical universe. If you didn't have a body, you'd scare the hell out of people you visit most of the time.
Let me ask you a question, man. Okay. How old are you again?
Yeah.
How old are you?
64.
64. Okay. And this is your life has been a long ride here. This is not your typical life, right?
What a long, strange trip it's been, Al.
Right. Okay. And I can relate, and I know once you're in it, you're in it, man, and it's just going along, and you're just trying to cope with it and move things along and learn things and travel. You get a lot of experience and stuff. I can relate to a lot of what you're saying. You're older than me, about 10 years older than me. What kind of advice can you give, man, after living a life like this? What do you tell people, man? Just enjoy your wife and kids and just go on about your own business, or try and figure it all out and try and turn things over? Well,
Yeah, I understand what you're asking.
You understand the question? Okay, thank you.
Here's what I tell people.
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand the question. I think that some of us came here with a purpose, for a reason. I think that the key is to find out what the hell you came here for, and hopefully get it done before you check out. Fair enough?
Yes, in a way. But now I'm asking another question.
I like that.
You've made it this far
right.
without winding up in prison or dead or whatever, now torture chamber or whatever. Do you have a certain confidence, that you're like unbreakable, that something's, you know what I mean?
I have a relationship. I have some friends upstairs. How's that?
Yeah, okay. I do understand
I
that too.
feel,
yeah.
I mean, let me tell you, the mind will invent whatever it needs in order for you to survive whatever the challenge is. You can write it off as being a delusion, a hallucination that you invent just so that you can get through whatever the hell's going on. I can explain everything that's happened to me genetically, but that's a whole long story because, my grandfather tried to assassinate Mussolini. We've been fighting fascists for generations, all right?
Okay.
And on the other side, it's actually, and there's an Indian medicine man back up there 4 or 5 generations, and I'm supposedly a shaman by blood and by mask, and I have the mask. So I can explain things that way. And I was sort of led kicking and screaming into all of this stuff because after I got out of Scientology in 1978, I was in the food, sex, money, and cars universe.
Gotcha.
You understand?
Yes, I do.
That was all I cared about. I wanted the house, the kid, the cat, and the car. Understand?
Yeah.
And I ended up with all those things. And there was an incredible emptiness.
Yeah.
It was all just stuff, more crap, stuff. And then something very strange happened. And also, you could not talk to me about UFOs. You couldn't talk to me about spirits or ghosts or Scientology. I didn't want to think about any of that stuff. The betrayal of Scientology, I carried all of that stuff in a bag on the end of a stick way back behind me and right over my shoulder. So I have one hand holding the stick, and the bag would be way back there. And whichever way I looked, I never saw it. Got it?
Yeah.
Worked great. And then I had a dream. I had a weird dream about a vat filled with body parts. And I told my girl at the time, and she goes, "Arnie, you're really weird." And I said, "Yeah, thanks." And we had some friends that would come over on the weekends to play cards. And I think the dream was on Tuesday or Wednesday. And on Saturday, we were playing, hearts, spades or something. And I told her cousins this dream about a vat filled with body parts. And they thought, "Arnie, you're really weird. You have some really strange dreams." And I said, "Yeah, I know." Okay. So we keep playing cards. Then a mailman comes, okay? And I heard the mailman walking up to the door. So I get up and I open the screen. It was a spring afternoon, and I open the door and I take the mail and I walk to the table where we're playing cards. And there's a big brown envelope. The rest is junk mail. So I opened the big brown envelope. It's handwritten. It's from Phoenix, Arizona or something. And inside it is the Communion newsletter. And it was published by Whitley Strieber. And I'm reading this article on the front. And it's some guy talking about all these UFO things. See, I didn't want to think about any of this stuff, all right? And then I'm looking on the second page, the article about different UFO reports, and I turn the page and I'm looking at it. And then about halfway down the page, the man says, "And the reports about vats filled with body parts are too strange to be believed."
Oh, really?
At which point, I almost spit my coffee, I put the newsletter down in the middle of the card table, looked at the other girls there, and I said, "I got witnesses for this one. I got witnesses. Read this line right now." And they leaned over, they read it, and they looked at me, and they pushed their chairs back, and I said, "Arnie, I think we're going to be going now. It's time to leave."
It is Ryan Seacrest here. There was a recent social media trend which consisted of flying on a plane with no music, no movies, no entertainment. But a better trend would be going to chumbacasino.com. It's like having a mini social casino in your pocket. Chumba Casino has over 100 online casino-style games, all absolutely free. It's the most fun you can have online and on a plane. So grab your free welcome bonus now at chumbacasino.com. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
It's been nice. Bye. And off they went, and they never came back to this date. When I asked them about this, one of them's dead, but the other two say that the hair on the back of their neck stands up whenever they think of that. And that's what happened to me. I could not explain that, because that parsing that like a cipher, that filled with body parts, that's like a long cipher. And then to have that kind of a weird dream with that set of words in it, tell people about it, they think you're crazy. Then the mailman comes, and there's a magazine or some newsletter. It's from Whitley Strieber, the guy that got abducted, right?
Yeah, I met him.
And in it, some guy's talking about UFO reports, and it talks about that's filled with body parts. Everybody was freaked out, including me. Got it?
Got it. So what do you make of it, man? What's the tomorrow? What's the end? What's the, you know?
Well, it was like, you have to understand that at that point, I was in the food, sex, money, and cars world.
Okay, that's what knocked you out. Okay.
I didn't want to think about spirituality. I didn't want to think about any of that stuff. I wouldn't want to figure out the secrets of the universe. I just, wanted some nice stuff. I wanted a lawn to mow. Wanted a little house. I just wanted I wanted the American dream. Turns out I wanted the American dream as described by the guys at the bleeding, from those projects in the late 40s at the Ford Foundation.
I got you, brother. Now let me ask you a question. Now.
Oh my God!
I know, man. Listen,
what a weird trip.
I can relate to you. Okay, and I think we know a lot of the same people too. But the thing is, too, is now that you've come back into the public and you've come back here through my little doorway, there's a lot of people who want to talk to you. People on on the edge who understand that are tuned into what you're saying. Okay, so with this, you've made a whole new step here in your life. Do you think it's worth it? Or or you're 60, 4 years old, whatever. Time to relax, or what? What do you think, man?
Well, here's what I figure. I figure if the information that you give to somebody helps one person, that makes it worth it. There's that Chinese proverb. You want to be happy for a day, go fishing. If you want to be happy for a, you know what I mean? You've read that thing. Yeah. And the last one is, if you want to be happy for a year, inherit a fortune. If you want to be happy for a lifetime, help somebody. I believe that's true.
Okay. Now, and what you do now is you do some deprogramming. Now, how does that work?
Well, I've been explaining how the trick was done in chat rooms and in personal chats with people, with ex-members. And, I got a stack of letters and thank yous, and man, when I read your stuff, it suddenly all made sense to me. And people will come out of Scientology, but they'll still be holding on to, well, this piece of technology works, yeah, it's all the same crap,
I got you.
And if they don't throw it out, they can never see anything else. They're looking at life through Hubbard's rose-colored glasses that lie. And when I got involved, okay, here's the near and short of it. The reasons I got into Scientology were the promises Hubbard made. The gains, the spiritual awakening, and information that has come to me, and the understanding I have gained, deconstructing how that bastard tricked us, is priceless. But it's like the gift is coming out of that and turning that whole rat hole to advantage. And that's sort of what it ended up doing. I mean, I don't know that I would have figured out as much stuff as I've come to know had I not gotten involved in it to begin with.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
So maybe, yeah. So, I mean, the real gift to Scientology, the gifts, I mean, I have had the most incredible insights that I wouldn't trade for anything in the universe, even money. Fighting my mind out of that trap and figuring out how it was done. And it's almost like, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. Well, a lot of people have helped me over the years. like you run into somebody and they say, hey, you got to look at this. And I'll look and I'll go, oh my God. And I found that the more you find out about how the trick is done, the easier it is to tell if something's true or not. And the more valuable knowledge that you don't know becomes, because it aligns so much other information. The truth becomes like a beautiful crystal, this wonderful, perfect thing. And, stuff that doesn't fit, doesn't fit. It's like a imperfection. We got to take a diamond in and nuke it with positrons to get rid of the black stuff so you can triple its value. You guys know about that, right?
Yeah.
Anyway.
Let me ask you a question, man, now, because we're down to the last 4 minutes. Now, you and I met at in the Dave McGowan Weird Scenes Inside the Canyon group. It's kind of a little private kind of group. Only about a couple hundred of us in there. And we're all kind of tuned into the same kind of stuff.
Yeah.
What do you make out of the stuff that we talk about in there? Any of it?
Well, I think we're dealing with the same techniques, so fucking with their minds. I mean, look, if you read what Oppenheimer said, hang on, I got to read a quote to you.
Okay. 3 minutes.
Okay. I got to read this to you.
Okay.
This is Dr. Robert Oppenheimer, all right? And he's talking to where the hell the quote? Here it is. All right. In the last 10 years, physicists have been extraordinarily noisy about the immense powers, largely through their efforts, but through other efforts as well, have come into the possession of man. Powers notably and striking in terms that sound very provincial, because the psychologist could hardly do anything without realizing that for him, the acquisition of knowledge opens up the most terrifying prospects of controlling what people do and how they feel. This is true for all of you who are engaged in practice. As the corpus of psychology gains in certitude and subtlety and skill, I can see that the physicists please that what he discovers be used with humanity and be used wisely will seem trivial compared to those pleas which you will have to make and for which you will be responsible. And then Dr. Arthur Bachrach, some big guy, Naval Medical Research Institute, says, this was, for most psychologists, a most sobering observation. The possibility of controlling human behavior indeed becomes a more terrifying prospect than the control of nuclear reactions. So we're talking about a technology that makes the nuclear bomb seem trivial.
And I would agree.
This is the technology of how to make... Yeah. So this is the technology that can be used to make slaves. This is the technology which, if propagated, would create the Great Slave Rebellion of 2014. Because we got no business planning a revolution, guys. But we might be able to do a slave rebellion.
Okay, we're about to go off the air live. We're about to drop Awake Radio. We'll see you guys next week, but we can record a few minutes after the show. Here with the...
We're still on the air in Bull Spirit Radio.
Oh, there you go. Okay, great. Okay. Yeah, but no, you know what? If you're picking up my feed, JP, we won't be, because Spreaker drops.
No. I'm on the call.
Oh, there you go. Okay, great.
I'm talking to you.
I got you, brother.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I got, we can go on all night. Ed, you can go to sleep. Yeah,
I'm going to sleep, man. I don't know about you guys.
It is Ryan Seacrest here. There was a recent social media trend which consisted of flying on a plane with no music, no movies, no entertainment. But a better trend would be going to chumbacasino.com. It's like having a mini social casino in your pocket. Chumba Casino has over 100 online casino-style games, all absolutely free. It's the most fun you can have online and on a plane. So grab your free welcome bonus now at chumbacasino.com. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.